Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Heroes vs Villains episode 13. We're back with our top 5 takes for this episode, so let's get straight into it. And what an episode. I myself, with my hands on my head, just not believing what I saw in the end of this episode, because I thought it was such a great, beautiful storytelling and misdirect throughout the episode that I did not see the tribal council coming that we had in this episode. So, but let's get into it. Let me try and make some sense of what we saw just happen over the last hour as I've just watched the episode. But takeaway number one is that with Liz going over to the new Heroes tribe and being a part of her Spice Girls alliance again, we see this massive power struggle develop throughout this episode where Flick is trying to get her way, wedge her way into that alliance by using and weaponizing her super strength in this game, which is her social game. We saw that in the first season that she played, and we're seeing it again here on full display. She somehow found a way to dodge the axe that George was swinging at her head, and it was really impressive to see. She really notices that Liz is someone in that tribe that is new. She's formed bonds with all of these OG heroes on the other side, and somehow she's been getting information, and I would love to know where that came from, that she is close to, that Liz, that is close to Nina, David, and Sam. So when Liz asks her, who are your alliances on the other side, pretty directly, she gives Liz what she wants to hear. She tells her, I'm close to David, I'm close to Sam, and I'm close to Nina, but we all know that Flick is actually really close to Sean. We saw that early in the season, so she's playing right into the hand here that she's being dealt, and she wedges her way into that trio of girls, saying that it's good to have another girl around, and does a really good job throughout this episode to gain control to a certain degree within that tribe, or to take control away from George. Now, obviously, George notices this and feels extremely threatened by the fact that Flick is starting to wedge her way in there, because he knows how good she is at flip-flopping when it needs to be done, and she can go either way. She's got alliances on both sides, and she's very aware that she's been at the bottom. So George does not want Flick to go into this merge at all, because he thinks that she could sink his game. He does not look at Flick as a reliable number in this game, and I think his read on Flick is correct. I don't think Flick will stay with this alliance in the future, so I'm a little bit worried, because they did end up voting one of their own numbers out of this game right now. Alright, takeaway number 2. George gives Haley valuable information at the reward challenge after the reward challenge finishes and the supervillains win this obstacle course race where they had to throw balls into a hoop at the end of it. He goes over to Haley and very quickly tells her, Nina betrayed you, she's coming for you, you need to watch out, which makes Haley very panicked and nervous for the rest of the episode, but it continues to show something that I've been seeing the whole season. The storytelling and the narrative is that George wants to work with Haley, and up until this point, I don't think Haley has wanted to work with George. I think she has been trying to get away from him and work with her tribe, but him passing this information along to Haley, potentially trying to look out for her, I think is going to pay back dividends in the future, and you may see Haley more persuaded to go over to George's alliance when they get to the merge, to have safety in numbers, because George sees her as a part of the core group. He believes that if the king and the queen works together this season, it's going to be very difficult to take them out, and I do think to a certain degree, both of them do need each other in this game as two of the biggest threats in the game as well, so there can be shields for each other. But it is a dangerous game, because we know Haley is great at playing the individual immunities. She's good at winning, she's good at puzzles, she's good at the physical endurance stuff. So if she gets anywhere to that top 6, top 8 type of scenario, she could win her way out to the end. If you get a winner sitting in the end, I don't believe that people will hold it against her and say she's won it, she doesn't deserve to win it again. I think people will respect the fact that she should have been voted out first and she found a way to the end. So Haley's stocks are starting to climb in my mind a little bit again, and that is thanks to George. Now, takeaway number 3, Matt finally wakes up and he decides that he's going to dabble a little bit in the dark side and join George when they go to the merge. And he says, hey, I want to work with you. If I'm loyal, if I tell you I want to work with you, I'm going to stick with you at the merge. And that is music to George's ear. He talks to Jerry about it. He talks to Stevie about it. He wants to get the boys together, and he wants Matt to come with them because he looks at Matt as less of a threat compared to a Flick. He knows Flick is good socially. He knows Flick can maneuver her way out of sticky situations, but Matt is unproven. He seems like a nice guy, but we haven't seen much of his strategic game yet. We haven't seen much of his social game yet, and he seems to be a little bit more introverted from what we've seen. He seems like a nice guy, but, that's not necessarily going to make him win the season. So I do think George is reading that correctly to a certain degree, but we also know that Matt is a part of the Meat Tray Boys Alliance, so will he jump over when the merge happens? I think he will definitely talk to those boys again. I think in the back of Matt's mind, he is always going to have that doubt. Those guys have had more time to spend together now. There's already like a division almost forming between like the Sam, Davids, and Sean's of this world. So will that be a stable home for him to go back to? I don't know. I feel like Matt will stick with this extended Spice Girls alliance moving into the merge. Takeaway number 4, there's no immunity idol hidden at the sandwich bar reward, which is pretty interesting, to be honest with you, because most of the time when you see these different reward challenges where people can choose in what order they go to the sandwich bar, they always hide something there, and it's normally very beneficial for you to be the first one to go. So all of these players, being no rookies to the game, they know that they want to be the first one out. So Nina cheekily tries to say, hey, I'll go first if no one wants to, but everybody knows what's up, and they do have to draw straws to see who gets the shortest straw and gets to go first. Sean, I believe, was that person who went first, followed by Haley, and so forth. And at the end, Sam had the ability to topple everything over and look for this idol. And the production team did not show us anyone finding this idol. Now, I've got a question for you, the audience, the viewers, the listeners of this show. Do you think that production potentially hid someone finding it? And if they did hide somebody finding it, who would they have not shown finding the idol? I think Haley could have potentially found it. I find it very hard to believe that if there was an idol, that she would not have found it. And I think that it could be revealed at a later stage. It does look like the production team this season is trying to catch us out a few times, which I'm really enjoying, because I've at times found the editing team of the Australian version of the show to be very predictable, and it has not been predictable this season. Alright, takeaway number 5, and I just realized I'm going to do 6 for this episode because there is a big one that I need to talk about at the end. But takeaway number 5 is the immunity challenge is a classic with a bit of a twist, because they have to hold up these sandbags with water above them, and if they drop it, all the water comes down on them. They have to hold on to at least one sandbag, and if they drop that, they're out, which means there's more weight on the rest of the team. Now, it was a bit of anticlimactic because we knew the supervillains had all of the muscle, and they did end up winning this, but I really liked the twist that production brought into this classic immunity challenge, where they had 2 people face off in a puzzle challenge against each other, and whoever won the puzzle challenge could then eliminate someone from the other tribe, making it a little bit harder for them to hold onto that weight above their head. And obviously, Nina's so impressive on the puzzle, showing that she's definitely inherited the survivor genes, and she absolutely crushes Stevie. And I kind of feel bad saying that because of how this episode ended, but she crushes him in this puzzle portion of the game, and very smartly takes out Matt, who was the only real physical guy there. Shouts out to Liz and Flick and Shani for hanging in there as long as they did. Obviously George as well, but those girls had to do a lot of work going up against those muscly, beefy boys on the other side. Alright, final takeaway for this episode. It's a sad conclusion. Let's be honest, Mucky is probably going to be devastated, and for you who don't know who Mucky is, he is my co-host for the recap live show that we do at the end of the week, where we break down, I guess, a lot more of the episodes. So if you're ever wanting more content, make sure to join one of those lives or watch it at a later stage after the recording. But it is sad to see Stevie go. He's a big fan of Stevie Mucky, and yeah, it's sad to see him go. I did not see the edit going that way at all. We see Stevie in the beginning of the episode, bonding with Jerry about them being the 2 oldest guys, hearing not being great and all that. He just seems like this loyal guy who just finally thought he had this alliance. He had George in his pocket. Him and George were bouncing ideas off each other, even though I think George just entertained him in a certain degree, but he felt like he was really in there, and he let his guard down with George, Shani, and Liz, and he became collateral damage in a very big power struggle within the Spice Girls boardroom where Liz, Shani, and George resides. You know, George was gung-ho on trying to get Flick out of this game. He did not trust Flick going into the merge, and then Liz and Shani really wanted to play with Flick. They felt strongly that Flick is someone they could work with, and it got to the point where George had to decide if he was going to break up the Spice Girls over this vote, and it remains to be seen if the right decision was made, because I actually feel like I agreed with George in this scenario. I really do think Flick is going to be dangerous at the merge, and I don't think she's to be trusted, and I think Matt potentially could be a better number. But the one thing that really blew my mind is that they were willing to go and vote out Stevie, who seemed to be a loyal soldier, a loyal number for the Spice Girls Alliance. So I feel like there's a lot we've missed, and maybe Shani still didn't fully trust Stevie going into the merge. Maybe there is a personality difference between them as well, and he just struggled to, because he's older, to really connect with them. I don't know what happened, but I felt very sad to see it play out the way it did, and all of this happened because of a very great TV moment where Liz went toe-to-toe, pound for pound, with King George at Tribal Council, saying that if you are still gung-ho on voting out Flick, I'm going to play my idol for her. And she saves Flick by making that move, because George ends up pulling Jerry to the side and says, what's the compromise? Would you rather want Matt to go or Steve to go? And he says, I would rather have Steve go, which was a very interesting call here. And they do change this vote. Sad ending to this, but what a really, really good episode, because like I said so many times throughout this top 5 takes, I didn't see it coming. Those are my top 5/top 6 takes for this episode. Let me know what your thoughts were on this episode, and look out for tomorrow night when I do my next top 5 takes at the merge, and I will try and get a power ranking in now that we've hit the merge as well, so we can talk about those people that I think are in the running to win this game. But after this episode, I am really confused, because there is a big power struggle happening, and I feel like the game is so in flux, but that's what's going to make it exciting at the merge, let's be honest. For now, that's it. Grab your torches, head back to camp, and I'll catch you tomorrow night. See ya. Bye.